Hello, and welcome once again to the David Messiah YouTube channel, where our watchwords are to teach and to build back up the kingdom of Zion. And my name is Sidney Thomas. I'm the founder and the moderator of this YouTube channel. I'm also that David Messiah, called to be that one raised up from this land of Trinidad in the latter day. So it is in that capacity, and indeed as a servant of the Most High, that I bring you this message, which is entitled Message to the People of Trinidad and Tobago on the occasion of the visit of Osei Tutu II, the king of the Ashanti. And I'm to let you know that in this visit is a sign of our raising back up as a people. When I say our raising back up, I refer to the Negro in this land and the Negro in all the lands, the far-flung lands into which we have been scattered. For there came a time, and it's there in the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13. That's when it started, but it continued for several centuries thereafter. There came a time when the scattering of the Negro, by which I mean the people of the same tribal root as the Negro. The Negro was a praise title applied to King David and came to mean king. The praise title Negro meaning simply that one who is watched over. That one who is watched over by the Most High. That one who is the apple of God's eye. So those who are of the tribal root of Negro David therefore refers narrowly to those of the same tribe from which David came, the tribe of Judah, but more broadly because he reigned and ruled over all the 12 tribes of Israel, of Jacob. So all those who are of the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and Jacob's name, as you all should know, was changed to Israel, actually IYE-SHE-IYE in the original paleo-Hebrew. All the children of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob of that bloodline are Negro by definition. Okay, because it is these 12 tribes that constitute, in the broad sense, the tribal root from which King David has come. Okay, so we were scattered out of the land at some point in a couple, well, at least 2 waves, but actually more than that. And I take you now to the book of 2nd Ezra, chapter 13. I may have it here already. Yes, here we go. 2nd Ezra, chapter 13, verses 40 to 45, which speaks of the time of the Assyrian captivity, which took place around 720 BC. And so I read 2nd Ezra chapter 13, starting at verse 40. Those are the 10 tribes which were carried away prisoners out of their own land in the time of Hosea the king. Hosea the king. And what is the name of the king who has just now visited Trinidad? His name is Osei Tutu II, which is the same name as Hosea. It's just a variation, a dialectal sort of variation, because the Bantu and Negro languages of Africa are really daughter languages of the original paleo-Hebrew. So he is Hosea, and there is significance in that name, which I'm going to try now to explain. But let me first continue with this reading. In the time of Hosea the king, whom Salmanasar, the king of Assyria, led away captive, and he carried them over the waters, and so came they into another land. Verse 41. But they took this counsel among themselves, that they would leave the multitude of the heathen, and go forth into a further country where never mankind dwelt. And I want to underline that, where never mankind dwelt. So we, the Negro, became the aboriginal people of all kinds of lands all over the earth, including the Americas. We were the first people to occupy the Americas, including Western Europe, Northern Europe, including Eastern Europe, including the Far East. I remember I had some friends from Taiwan at one point, and they know that their origins were Negro. Okay, and I have something about that in my book, The Coming of David Messiah. All the way down to the South Pacific, in lands like what is today called Fiji, what is today called New Zealand. Okay, we were there first, so that the Fijian people are our people. They are Negro people. They did not come out of Africa. They came out of that inheritance land of Israel. But let me carry on to verse 42. That they might there keep their statutes, which they never kept in their own land. 43. And they entered into Euphrates by the narrow places of the river. For the Most High then showed signs for them, and held still the flood till they were passed over. Okay. But one of the lands which were where never before mankind dwelt, including those parts of Africa which Ham had not occupied. Because Ham, if you go to the book of Jubilees, chapter 8, there came a time after Noah and his 3 sons and their wives came off the ark. They all went down to that same place, to nowadays called Mesopotamia, between those 2 rivers, the Tigris to the north, the Euphrates to the south. And the area in between is that fertile crescent called Mesopotamia. That's where mankind sort of restarted after the flood. And in Jubilees chapter 8, they divided up the land amongst themselves, so that Ham got the hot lands to the south, Japheth got the cooler lands to the north, and Shem got the lands, Middle Earth, in between. Okay? So Ham had occupied the Nile Valley area. Ham had occupied North Africa. So that when the scattering took place that is here being talked about, the Negro children went where? To lands where never before mankind dwelt. So we went into Africa, but into sub-Saharan Africa, into those areas that Ham had not already taken up residence in. And that's how come the Negro, the Bantu people, are now so numerous in what is today called sub-Saharan Africa. And included among them are the people today known as the Ashanti. And Osei Tutu II is their present-day king. And he is named after the same Osei when this scattering took place. Okay? So there is, and let me go now to, let me finish setting the stage as to the sign that is present merely by him having come here now to this land of Trinidad, the land from which the David Messiah is today being raised up. Okay? So we go now to the book of Hosea, chapter 6. Hosea is just another way of saying Osei. So he has the same name as Hosea, the prophet Hosea. After 2 days will he revive us. This is verse 2 I'm reading from. 2 days, a day here being 1,000 years. In the third day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. So we saw in the time of Salmanasar, the king there in Israel was Hosea. Okay, and the prophet Hosea is being made here to say that in the third day, the third 1,000-year period, he will raise us up and we shall live in his sight. So that we, in effect, if you count, it sort of depends how you do the counting, but if you count not from the time of the Assyrian invasion, but if you count from the time of the first kingdom of the Gentiles, the first Babylon kingdom, when Nebuchadnezzar laid siege to Jerusalem, Scripture records in the book of Ezekiel, chapter 24, verse 1, that Nebuchadnezzar laid siege upon Jerusalem, upon Zion, on the 10th day of the 10th month on the Most High's calendar. On the Gregorian calendar that we use today, that was precisely December 31st, 606 BC. And I am to let you know, and I was given also to give that information in the very first upload on this YouTube channel, in a letter of demand that the Most High had me to make upon the Catholic Church and upon the modern state of Israel, okay, to let them know and to let the world know that reversing, and this was in accordance with prophecy. It said, Daniel chapter 12, in accordance with prophecy, Israel laid siege in return upon Babylon. And the date for that was December 31st, 2021 on the Gregorian calendar. The 10th day of the 10th month, year 6007, because we're already in the 7th millennium. We are now in year 6009. And I'm not going to go into further detail as to that because I've dealt with it in that original letter, and I've dealt with it in a subsequent message that led us to know that the Most High worked in that regard through Russia. So December 31st, 2021 was when Russia laid siege to Babylon in the name of US, UK, NATO, through the foreign minister Lavrov. He threw down the gauntlet. He said, look, we need certain security guarantees. We want to negotiate with you, but if you will not negotiate, or if you're just wasting time, Russia will do what Russia has to do to ensure its own security. So that was the beginning of the end of Babylon. Right? Israel laid siege upon Babylon. And I was given also to say that soon thereafter, the prophecy of Revelation chapter 18 verse 2 would come to pass, and I read, "And he cried mightily with a strong voice, saying, Babylon the great is fallen, and is become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird." So this took place in the in the spiritual, as of the third day of the new year, 6008. Okay, only about January, February, only about 3 months after Russia laid down that gauntlet. So Babylon the Great is fallen in the spiritual. And what we are seeing now is the working out in the physical of that which has already taken place in the spiritual. Babylon is fallen. And one of the signs of that is what? Babylon has become the habitation of devils, and the hold of every foul spirit, and the cage of every unclean and hateful bird. What are these foul spirits? What are these devils? Well, that's the LGBT, and they're giving us plenty of evidence as to that. They're coming out in force, they're coming out in their numbers. I will take only a minute to show you, because what is the saying? A picture is worth 1,000 words. And someone sent me this in WhatsApp, and it speaks. They're pushing this one here.
The U.S. ambassador to Jamaica and his wife. Jamaican government refused to accept them.
They're now in Jamaica, and they're pushing it here also in Trinidad, and all sort of credit to the Jamaicans that they are resisting this attempt to foist upon them that which is illegal in that land, which is to grant recognition to a same-sex marriage between the ambassador that the U.S. is posting to Jamaica, and they want Jamaica to accord recognition to his same-sex wife. So this is what is answering to Babylon becoming what is described in Revelation chapter 18, verse 2. It has become the habitation of devils, and the hole of every foul spirit, and a cage of every unclean and hateful bird. So this is one of the signs that Babylon has indeed fallen. And there are many other signs. The United States and Europe in general used to walk the earth as a colossus. When the United States would say boo, everybody would just simply jump and say, well, how high? Well, they no longer have that power. African presidents have sort of asserted themselves. When Macron goes into Africa and he misspeaks himself before, I think he did so on one occasion before the president of Congo, the Congo president, not 10 years ago would have stayed quiet. Not so anymore. Congo president actually stood up and corrected him for the misspeak that he misspoke. So things have changed, and we see it now in Francophone Africa with what has just happened with that coup in Niger, preceded by the coup in Mali, and another one in Burkina Faso. And that young man there from Burkina Faso recently distinguished himself in that summit meeting, Russia-Africa summit, where we obviously have a new sort of wave, a new kind of brand of African leaders standing up. And they're saying, okay, we've had enough. We certainly had enough of the colonial enterprise under which Africa was carved up and colonial pillage and plunder was allowed to take place. And the continuing of that pillage and plunder in a neo-colonial sort of era and dispensation, using the kinds of techniques that Perkins spoke about in his book, Confessions of an Economic Hitman, that basically African presidents and prime ministers are given a choice, mafia style, between silver and lead, silver being the bribe and lead being the bullet. And if they take the bribe, then, those presidents are allowed to kind of be first in line for the pillage and plunder of their own resources. But the quid pro quo is that they allow these Western corporates to come in and to steal. There's no other word for it. The riches that lie under the soil there of Africa, whether it be diamonds, whether it be copper, whether it be oil, whether it be gas, whether it be gold, whether it be coltan, whether it be platinum. I mean, the list is endless and the riches are endless. And if they take on the conditionalities of World Bank and IMF loans, they're required also to open up their economies. Even things like food security, they can no longer pursue policies that would guarantee food security because they also have to belong to the World Trade Organization, under which you can have cheap wheat being dumped into Africa that makes it difficult now to bring up your own agricultural sector. And I love Brother Putin and what he's just done in terms of offering free grain. But, the African leaders have to be careful that they not pass on the wheat at such low prices that they undercut Africa's own ability to produce its own grain, whether it be maize or corn or rice or even wheat in some cases. So, and then if the president doesn't take the silver, the next step, according to Perkins in his book, is they send out the jackals, what he called the jackals. These are the ones that would assassinate those presidents who, quote unquote, don't play ball. So this is what happened to Patrice Lumumba. Patrice Lumumba was not playing ball with them. He wanted to develop Congo for the people of Congo. And that would not do. So they killed him. There's a beautiful movie about that by a Haitian filmmaker. I've forgotten his name now. Very excellent movie. But in any case, if they can't get to the presidents by neither silver nor lead, by bullet, the next thing they do is they send out the army. They put boots on the ground. And that's what they did with Gaddafi. That's what they did with Saddam. They used NATO against Gaddafi in Africa. Okay, because Gaddafi also wasn't playing ball and the jackals couldn't take him out. So they actually bombed Tripoli for I think about a month, and that country is still reeling under the destabilization that then took place. So that has been the neo-colonial program. That is what France has been doing in Francophone Africa. And this is what that president, the young man captain Ibrahim Traore, I think is his name, was saying, no, we can't do that anymore. And the new sort of coup leader in Niger said, no, we're not going to do that anymore. It's too blatant. Okay, so they've deposed that francophone, or rather that French puppet there in Niger, who was the sort of conduit for stealing, Niger's resources, principally uranium ore. So this is what has been going on. My point is that sort of hegemonic arrangement has now come to an end. Because along with that hegemonic arrangement, whereby they would say jump and we would say how high, behind that was God gave them that dominion. That is there in the book of Genesis chapter 27, where there was a big sort of, tussle argument between Jacob and Esau, the two twins. And Jacob got the dominion first, but then Esau came later, and then Esau also was given the dominion, the difference being that Esau had to exercise the dominion through the sword, which is a way of saying he made a pact with Satan. And that's why during his dominion it has been by war, war, war. Because every so often a huge blood sacrifice has to be made to Satan. In the case of the dominion given to Jacob, there's no rider that he shall live through the sword. Rather, the element of coercion that would come from exercise of the dominion is that promise that the Most High made already in his covenant with Abraham, which basically says all that curse thee shall be cursed, and all that bless thee shall be blessed. So that covenant came down and was given also to Jacob. So that here now in the seventh millennium, and we're just about now to enter into that millennium of peace that is talked about. And this follows from 2nd Ezra chapter 6 and other places. 2nd Ezra chapter 6 verse 9, where it says, for Esau is the end of the world, and Jacob is the beginning of it that followeth. All right? So the dominion is shifting now from Esau to Jacob. And it is happening with these plain signs and wonders, which is spoken of there in 2nd Ezra, I believe, chapter so I'm looking in the wrong chapter, aren't I? Yes, 2nd Ezra chapter 9, verse 5, for like as all that is made in the world hath a beginning and an end. Everything has a beginning and an end. And the end is manifest. And certainly in the case of Esau's dominion coming to an end, Babylon is fallen, as and has become the habitation of devils. So we're seeing the signs of that in LGBT, kind of parading about worldwide, and they're trying to rope in all of Jacob into that nonsense. And verse 6, even so the times also of the Most High have plain beginnings in wonders and powerful works, and endings in effects and signs. So the ending there of Babylon is it becoming the habitation of devils. But I'm talking about Osei Tutu II. So he is coming with a sign. And the first element of that sign is that the scattering of the Negro people took place. The first of those scatterings took place during the reign of Osei, King Osei of the northern tribes. Okay? And here Osei now is coming to let us to know that our time has now come. Our dominion is now about to be entered into, because the time of Babylon is at an end. And when the time of Babylon is at an end, it is because the time of the Negro, of Jacob, will soon follow. And that's where we are now. And that's the message I'm to bring to you. Now, in bringing the message to you, I'm also supposed to let you know the meaning of the name Osei. Because the Most High gave me his name, essentially. And in the name Hosea is the Most High's name, as it is essentially with all of the prophets. All of the prophets essentially have the name of the Most High in their names. And indeed, Jacob has the name of the Most High in it. The real name of the Most High is IYE. And that was the sort of answer given to Moses in the book of Exodus chapter 3 verse 14. I'm not going to go into all that detail here now, because I've done so in other places, but I want to just enough to now make this link and hammer home point of us being raised back up. And I want to do so through this, well, I have it here, through the name this should have been 6-2. Bear with me, please. Well, let me just... the name of the Most High is IYE. That is sort of like a family name. And how it arises is by sound. It's onomatopoeia. E is the in-breath, ye is the out-breath. And since in the breath is the life, the abstract meaning of Iye is life. And that is the family name, so to say, by which we are to call the Most High. That is his name, Iye. And we are to the purpose of the children of Jacob is to become another batch of gods. You understand? So his name given to him was Iye, family name, which means life, same name as the name of the father. And his specific name is there in the suffix, which is Kob, which means heel, because he took hold of the heel of Esau, because he was a second twin. And his mother, Rebecca, took note. Was it Rebecca? Of the one that would come out second, because the Most High had already let her know that the blessing would pass to the second one. So he was given sort of whimsically, the suffix to his name was Kob, Kob, and that name came down to us as Jacob, but it's really Kob. And then when he slept, when he sort of wrestled all night with the angel, the sort of blessing was put upon him, and so his name was changed to IYE-SHE-IYE, where that suffix means the prince is here. So he is the one that would obtain the dominion and also obtain that covenant blessing that was given to Abraham, that all those that curse him would be cursed, and all those that bless him would be blessed. Okay, so IYE, the name Hosea is actually IYE-SHE-IYE. And this is a phrase, I am, that is found in Exodus 3:14. And how that name even arises is that when Adam was formed in the garden from the dust of the ground, before he became a living soul, the Creator demonstrated to the soul of Adam that breathing, IYE. So that's the first IYE in that name. Then having demonstrated to him the breath and the breathing, he blew the breath of life into Adam's nostrils. And the sound of that was something like shoo, shoo. So IYE, shoo. And then the second IYE is then Adam taking his first breath after he became a living soul. So this is the idea in the naming of the Most High that he gave us in the book of Exodus chapter 3 verses 14 and 15, where it says, I am that I am. In the English is how they translated it, but really it was IYE-SHE-IYE. Or if you make it not a sound but a word, IYE-SHE-IYE, that is really the name of Hosea. And that drifted over time to what now we call Hosea. And it drifted also in African paleo-Hebrew daughter languages, as we see with the king of the Ashanti, as we saw there in 2nd Ezra, chapter 9, I think, chapter 13, verse 40. During the time of Hosea, when Shalmaneser came from the Assyrians invading. So Adam was given the breath of life, and so from being a soul that was not living, he became a living soul, and so he arose, he got up. From being, in a sense, a slumber, not alive, to becoming a living soul. And this is there now what was given to Hosea the prophet, who has that name IYE-SHE-IYE, to say, and sorry, there's a misprint here, a typo. It should be Hosea 6 verse 2, not 2 verse 6. After 2 days will he revive us, the same way the Creator brought to life Adam in the garden, and in the 3rd day he will raise us up, and we shall live in his sight. You see the connection there? So this, in a sense, is the meaning of the name Hosea. It is bringing back to mind that which took place in the garden, and which even led to the name by which the Most High said, we shall call him unto all generations. IYE. That name that means life. And he, to distinguish himself, because all who are invited unto life eternal in his presence will also become gods. because we are made in the image of God, and if He's a God, He is making us gods also. Okay? So if there are so many gods, they all need to be distinguished, isn't it? So now His distinguishing name is Hawa, which means in the Hebrew, the Most High, or the highest. And I'm not going to go into how that arises in terms of the Paleo-Hebrew, but it's in the book. Okay, so this is now the significance of Osei Tutu now coming with a sign, with a wonder, carrying this name that denotes the idea of taking one who has been aslumber and reviving him. That's what his name means, and that is his function. He's letting us to know by his visit to Trinidad. And Trinidad is significant. Why? Because it is from this land that the Most High is raising up his David Messiah. All right? But the message is to all Negro wherever we were scattered. Now, in this context, I am also to let you to know, Most High said, look, I want you to read to them Psalm 132, not all of it, but actually a good part of it, starting at verse 9 and carrying through to the end. So this is like a benediction. This is like a good wish. Verse 9, Psalm 132, let thy priests be clothed with righteousness. So it's also an admonition. Let thy priests be clothed with righteousness. Because we went into captivity because even our priests were not righteous. You understand? And violated the very first commandment, which is to have no other gods before the Most High God. Anyway, let me carry on. And let thy saints, which means the chosen ones, we are the chosen by definition, shout for joy. So this is the time now to rejoice. Verse 10, for thy servant David's sake turn not away the face of thine anointed. The Lord, IYE-SHE-IYE, hath sworn in truth unto David. He will not turn from it. Of the fruit of thy body will I set upon thy throne. So this is the David Messiah. One of the fruit of the body of the loins of David. It is not one who was born by immaculate conception, who is Yeshua. He is a savior. He's not the Messiah. But I don't want to get too argumentative. Let me carry on. That is dealt with in various of the uploads. And in the book it is dealt with at length in chapter 1. Verse 12. If thy children will keep my covenant, and my testimony that I shall teach them, their children shall also sit upon thy throne forevermore. Now we're not going to go into captivity again. For the Lord hath chosen Zion. He hath desired it for his habitation. This is my rest forever. Here will I dwell, for I have desired it. I will abundantly bless her provision. I will satisfy her poor with bread. I will also clothe her priests with salvation, and her saints shall shout aloud for joy. There will I make the horn of David to bud. I have ordained a lamp for mine anointed. His enemies will I clothe with shame, but upon himself shall his crown flourish. He said, read that to them. And I want to take you now, it's there in many places in Scripture, but it's fairly punchily addressed in the book of Daniel chapter 7, because this is where we are. I've already read 2 Ezra chapter 6 verse 9, which says, for after Esau comes Jacob, isn't it? But in Daniel chapter 7, he speaks of the 4 kings of the Gentiles that would arise. And here in verse 18 he says, but the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom. So after the time of the 4 kings of the Gentiles is up, which is where we are now, the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. And it's further down here in verse 25, which speaks to this 4th kingdom of the Gentiles, which we are now coming up out of, represented by the last of the hegemons, which is the United States, but before that it was Britain, and in any case the HOR, the great whore that rided that red dragon. Verse 25 says, and he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, persecute it, torture it, bring it down into servitude, into captivity, and to think to change times and laws. And they shall be given into his hand for a time and times and the dividing of time. So yes, he got the dominion. But until a time and times and the dividing of time, which is essentially about 2,250 years, about 2,300 years. And that time is now up. Babylon the Great is fallen, that has already happened in the spiritual. And we're seeing the signs of it now in the physical. But going on to verse 26, you see there was a judgment because Esau had a complaint, wasn't it? Esau thought that he should have been given it. And he's hated Jacob with a passion. It says that in Scripture at various places. And that has explained the whole white supremacy, the whole sort of oppression aspect of the way that he has exercised the dominion. Because there was a certain implacable hatred in how he did it. Verse 26. But the judgment shall sit, and they shall take away his dominion, to consume and to destroy it unto the end. So Esau only got 23, roughly 100 years. Verse 27. And the kingdom and dominion, and the greatness of the kingdom under the whole heaven, shall be given to the people of the saints of the Most High, whose kingdom is an everlasting kingdom, and all dominions shall serve and obey him. So this is where we are now. It's working itself out still in the physical, but we are seeing the signs as Babylon has become the habitation of devils. So this is where we are. Okay, so that was the first point. Took a long time elaborating it, but bear with me. The second point I was to make was that the Ashanti people are of the tribe of Benjamin. So they are of the southern kingdom, and so therefore they are also of the house of Judah. Here in Trinidad, we have people of the Ashanti tribe, so to say. We have people named Cujo and Cuffy and Kwamena, and so forth. All those are Ashanti names. Okay, we have various sort of retentions in the language that clearly come out of the Ashanti, including one of our delicacies, which is called Accra, which comes obviously out of Ghana. I'm not sure specifically whether it's Ashanti or not, but certainly out of Ghana. But the southern kingdom was or comprised tribe of Judah, tribe of Benjamin, and part of the tribe of Levi. So all together constitute the house of Judah. So the Ashanti are Bayuda people. Indeed, all of the tribes of the Akan Federation, one way or another, whether natively in terms of being one of tribe of Judah, Benjamin, or Levi, or whether by sort of accession, so to say, have joined the house of Judah, the house of Judah, the Bayuda house. Okay, so that piece of information that the Ashanti are tribe of Benjamin has been given to me as that David Messiah, as a priest, given the gift of Urim and Thummim. I could inquire as to that and get an answer, and that was the answer given. So they're part of the tribes of Israel. They're Negro in that very obvious kind of a sense. And I well remember Dr. John Henrik Clarke in his teachings, talking quite a bit about how the Ashanti on one side and the Yoruba on the other side kind of were a good sort of tag team together, and the Ashanti were perhaps more warlike of the two. But, the Yoruba, here in Trinidad, I think we are more Yoruba than Ashanti, and certainly I belong to the remnant house of David, which is an even smaller sort of subset of the Yoruba house, as it were. Okay, so whether we are Ashanti or whether you were Yoruba, whether we are narrowly of the house of David, all of us are in the same basket, so to say, and we all were put into captivity together one way or the other, and we are now being raised up together to march into this seventh millennium where Zion order will obtain. Okay, so that was the second point I was to make, because the historians can't tell you that. The matter is a little bit too clouded, and since we were put to sleep, all the historical records are not necessarily going to be available. Although one never knows, there might be priests in the Akan and Ashanti traditions that might know precisely that is the case, but I doubt it. Why? Because I visited Ghana a couple of times. I was there for the installment of the first chief of the Vihankra region, but I won't go off into that. I think I addressed that in my first book, The Appointed Time, the Tarrying and His Faith, so those who are interested can look at that. And I didn't get any sense at that time that the Akan in general, nor the Ashanti in particular, had any conception that we were in fact of the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So that information I needed to put on the table. And then the third thing the third point I'm to make in this message, as another sort of a sign, lies in the name of the current Prime Minister, whose task it was and who issued the invitation to the King of the Ashanti to come at this time here in Trinidad. His name is Dr. Keith Rowley. Dr. Indeed, and I think the Ashanti king was correct, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Christopher Rowley. His name Keith, if you strip away the vowels and treat it as the paleo-Hebrew name, his name is Kata, which means, among other meanings, those who have been separated, cut off. Okay, kata. It's a word that is cognate to even the Japanese word katana, which means sword, isn't it? You cut. So we, the ones who were taken away into the Middle Passage and brought over here to the West, indeed were kata. And that term is sometimes used and sometimes as a term of derogation, because the wicked one set us at loggerheads against each other. We were not supposed to trust our brethren there in Africa. And those Africans are not supposed to trust these Negroes that came over here to the West. You understand? Divide and rule. I mean, it has gone on and on and on, and now it's coming to an end. So in that name is that significance. So he's representing the Negro that was sent over here, even though it's not per se a Hebrew name. You understand? His last name is Rowley, which is actually, if you again doing the same thing, that is Rawala. Rowley is Rawala. So in the same way that you could say Hawa, which means the Most High, instead of Ha, which is the definite article, you can substitute Ra. Ra means the king. So Rawa means the Most High King. You understand? And La is a way of representing God, is a way of representing immanence. Ra-wa-la, meaning the Most High King is here. So in a sense, in his name, Dr. Rowley is carrying that reference to this connection back to the Most High King, to the Most High. Significance there. Sign. And his middle name is Christopher. That root part of the name is Christ. The suffix fer in the Latin, I think it comes from the Latin, means the bearer of. He's the one that brings the Christ. But Christ is just another way, a Greek way, to say the Messiah. The David Messiah. So that in his name, what the significance that it is carrying is that it is in his term of office here in this land of Trinidad and Tobago, from which the David Messiah is to arise. It is in his term of office that is going to take place. That is what that is saying. And by the way, he's not from Trinidad, he's from Tobago. I think I've given at some length the sort of the signage, even in the name Trinidad. Again, do the same thing and remove the vowels, because the meaning in here is not so much in the vowels as in the consonants. And Trinidad spells out at the end the king, the son of David. That's what that spells out. And in the name that the Arawak gave to this island, it's IYE-SHE-IYE. We say IYE nowadays, but it really should always be IYE-SHE. Because the original orthography that we go to in the records was by the Spanish. And they were writing down what they were told. So they wrote it in Spanish. So if we read it in Spanish, read it back as IYE-SHE, which is a Hebrew word, prefix of which is Iye, which is the name of the Most High. The suffix of which is Re, which means king. So it is adverting to this land is so named that it will be from this land that the king would arise. And that word paria, which is ubiquitous in this land, is IYE-RE again, but with the additional consonant pa that is added. That pa consonant, which is depicted by a mouth. So it's not, instead of pa IYE-RE, it is pa re IYE. Yeah, pa re, it's just the same meaning though. So the king who is to be raised up here will be identified by his mouth, because his mouth will speak that which the Most High would put in his mouth to speak. And it is from understanding what the Most High put in his mouth to speak that one would recognize that, hey, this is that David Messiah. And that is the significance of the paria, or parie, that is so ubiquitous, that word that is so ubiquitous in this island. But I was going to say that he's from Tobago, Dr. the Right Honorable Keith Rowley. Do the same thing, eliminate the vowels. You have what? The consonants T, B, G. To, Bet, Ga. Which means what? At the end, the house of the one that is watched over. So even though Tobago is an island unto itself, with its own history, traditions, and etc., at the end, it is joined together with Trinidad, and it is signed in such a way that the reference is again to the one that is watched over. So that's what I wanted to bring to you in this message. There's much fuller context in various of the earlier messages I've posted to this YouTube channel. The very first letter of demand upon the Catholic Church and upon the modern state of Israel, the letter to the heads of state and government of the Commonwealth, the letter to colonized and formerly colonized peoples, letter about the king of the south being Russia, and there's just lots there to listen to. Uploads as to signs of the David Messiah, signs of the coming of the David Messiah, and etc. So there's a richness and fullness of context that I would like to sort of, if you like, attach to this message by reference. Okay, so that it's not coming just sort of out of the blue like that. Okay, so with that I say I give all praise, all glory, all exaltation to the Most High God, Yahweh, and to all of you still listening I say Shalom.